David Marr with the Telegram. As we've been doing the last few weeks, we'll pass through the list by order of registration so everybody is able to ask 2 questions and 1 follow-up. We will then proceed with additional rounds as required until 10 minutes after 12. I ask you to keep your phone lines on mute until called upon. Premier Ball will begin very shortly. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. And needless to say, I think you've heard me say many times that over the last few months, this has been a difficult time for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. We know that residents, the business community, and our tourism industry and others have faced some significant challenges as a result of the pandemic. And so rest assured, the public health measures that we have put in place, working with our public health officials, and particularly the Chief Medical Officer, they're putting in place to protect our communities and protect our families. Now, we spend a significant amount of time working to keep you safe and making sure that everyone understands the importance of adhering to these measures. We have also spent a considerable amount of time working extremely hard to protect the economic and social well-being of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. The work that we have done and continue to do is to ease the burden of this unprecedented COVID-19 pandemic, which has been an experience around the world, not only just here in our province. As Premier of this province, with my ministers and our officials, we have daily discussions with our federal counterparts, our other provinces, And we make a commitment to work together to inform and develop programs and supports for those that have been impacted. All of the work is about helping you during this global pandemic, with the goal to provide assistance for such things as paying bills and making sure that the basic essentials of life are available to our residents. Throughout this pandemic, there has been a considerable focus on how to alleviate the stress that this pandemic has placed on the people and the industries within our province. Not every industry is impacted the same, but one of the hardest hit sectors has been the tourism and the hospitality industry. Incidentally, this week marks National Tourism Week, and I want to compliment the great tourism industry that we have in our province. So this is National Tourism Week, and like most others, our tourism industry is impacted very differently than some others during this pandemic. But it shouldn't stop us from recognizing that the industry plays such an important role throughout our province. This industry provides some 2,700 businesses across Newfoundlanders and Labrador with a tremendous experience of people who come to visit and those Newfoundlanders and Labradorians that travel around our great province. This tourism industry also supports some 20,000 jobs for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. And these jobs are created in rural, small communities and urban areas within Newfoundland and Labrador. There's not a community that is not impacted by the tourism industry in our province. The thing is, the local economies are energized by our tourism operators, and I always get a lot of pleasure as I go around the provinces, in particular in the summertime in the past, and just see the remarks of those tourists that visit our province and talk about how wonderful and friendly our people are. The key players are sustaining many rural communities in our province. That is why we continue to support and invest in the tourism industry. So by supporting tourism, we are fostering economic development, which is critical in diversifying and growing and strengthening our economy. The supports that we put in place will help ease the burden and the financial hardship that this virus has created in every small community, in every pocket of Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. So that is why today that we are pleased to announce a $25 million investment through the Tourism and Hospitality Support Program. This support will help make life a little easier during one of the toughest times that we have had to face in this province. The Tourism and Hospitality Support Program will deliver to eligible operators with some much-needed support as they begin to get back on their feet. It will help better position our tourism operators to reopen as restrictions begin to ease with our plan, Life with COVID-19. This new program complements existing emergency supports that have been announced over the past few weeks. Supports like the Regional Relief and Recovery Fund, which is of interest to many businesses within our province. This fund has two components. It's one delivered by the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency, this is a COA, and the other through the Community Business Development Corporations, known as CBDCs. Details continue to be released about how the fund will provide assistance. This is a federal fund put in place to fill some of the gaps that were previously not being able to fill from other federal programs. We continue to partner with the federal government on a number of other initiatives to assist businesses, such as commercial rent and lower income wage top-up for essential workers. We will continue to do everything that we can within our physical capacity to complement these initiatives. We have built on the concrete and tangible measures of the federal government to help businesses retain their employees and access capital to pay their bills. As part of our provincial plan, we have provided a number of relief measures, such as the relief for electricity customers, which is a one-time credit, as well as those that require interest relief on their electricity bills. We've also put in place some deferral of loan payments that has been expanded now for another 6 months, and that's under the Innovation and Business Investment Corporation. There's a program called the Wage Subsidy Support for Employers that has also been continued. We have provided support for the private sector employees for continuation of pay during the isolation period that the province put in place in March. We've also changed legislation that has been introduced to allow food establishments to sell beverages and alcohol for takeout on delivery. The liquor fees has been waived for the some 2020-2021 fiscal year, also with some $6 million in deferrals and on fees and some permits. So these are some examples of supports that we put in place. And all of the work that I mentioned here complements our existing supports that when it comes to the overall business community and our student population. And through another department, the Advanced Education and Skills Development, we have a range of employment and training programs and services. This helps employers in accessing the workers they need. There's also a number of wage subsidy programs available to help employers with funding. These programs are, as an example, assist in creating employment opportunities for the unemployed or the underemployed individuals, students, recent graduates, apprentices, and people and persons with disabilities. And in addition to that, the Canada, Newfoundland and Labrador Job Grant, that is also available. This grant provides funding to eligible businesses and organizations. This offsets the cost of training for their existing and future employees. So how does this all work? The employer contributes 1/3 of the cost of the training, as an example, and ensures that a job for all participants at the end of the training. So this is all about a government that's working for you and supporting you in every way that we can. And it includes building upon our strong partnerships like the one we have with the tourism industry. We will continue to work with them, listen to their concerns wherever possible, facilitate processes to help them carry out operations as best they can during these unprecedented times. So as we work together towards keeping COVID at bay, we will continue to work and support residents and all industries within our province. It is about working together as we learn to live and work in what will be a new normal. We must remain optimistic about reopening our economy and focus our attention to how we can best support businesses, which in turn provides much needed jobs to residents within our province. Now, before I turn it over to Minister Davis, who will get into a little deeper and give more specifics on the program, this $25 million announcement that will help the tourism and hospitality industry, I want to remind you today that the information that I just spoke about, these are all different programs and supports that are available to you through the government, through the provincial government and the federal government. This information is all on a COVID-19 website. So I encourage you to take a moment, log on, and familiarize yourself with this information and the supports and the resources that are available to you and your family and your business. So I now turn it over to Minister Davis for his comments today.
Thank you, Premier. Small and medium-sized business owners and operators are an important driver of the Newfoundland and Labrador economy. They create investment, employment opportunities, build stronger communities, and diversify our province's economy. These operators are also contributing to the unique and vibrant tourism and hospitality sector in our province. With tourism spending of $1.14 billion annually, the industry has a significant impact on many people, workers, business owners, and communities right across our beautiful province. Since the start of COVID-19 pandemic, we have been meeting with Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, Destination Management Associations, and the Newfoundland and Labrador Tourism Board, as well as individual operators. We have been hearing what the deep impacts of the pandemic are having on their industry. The industry is not only affected by the temporary closure, but has been and will continue to be impacted by travel restrictions locally, nationally, and internationally. Throughout our conversations, it is made clear that the operators are facing many critical issues such as cash flow challenges, canceling contracts due to travel restrictions, and loss of down payments for events. The industry has been and will continue to be requesting some sort of emergency relief that does not involve taking on more debt when revenue sources are minimal. Today's announcement of the new Tourism and Hospitality Support Program will provide more relief to established operators, or eligible operators, We know it requires a mix of supports to assist operators because there is no single answer here. The short-term program will help enable operators to cover some of their business costs. This support will provide immediate financial relief to operators that are dealing with substantial losses as well as continued fixed operating costs, providing support as many in the industry prepare to open. Under the Tourism and Hospitality Support Program, eligible small and medium-sized tourism operators will be able to apply for a one-time, non-repayable working capital contribution. The eligible applicants with less than $100,000 in gross sales will receive a $5,000 contribution, while those with greater than $100,000 in gross sales will receive a $10,000 contribution. Applicants will have to meet various criteria as demonstrating a revenue loss in March and April of 2020 or forecast sales losses in May to August of 2020. Numerous operators will benefit from this program, such as accommodations, tours, attractions, food and beverage businesses, outfitters, transportation groups, and retail operators in the tourism sector. The program details, including eligibility criteria, will be posted on the Department of Tourism, Culture, Industry and Innovation's website, gov.nl.ca/TCII, in the coming days. Applicants will be able to apply for the program starting Monday, June 8th. As the Premier mentioned earlier, throughout these unprecedented times, considerable focus has been placed on ways to help alleviate stress and burden of the COVID-19 pandemic. We know the industry is hurting and that many of the operators are worried about this year's tourism season, if there will be one, and what it may look like. Today, I want to assure the operators that we hear you and we will stand with you. Please know that we are committed to continue to work with you to help you get through this very difficult and trying time. This week marks National Tourism Awareness Week, traditionally an annual celebration of Newfoundland and Labrador, as well as Canada's tourism industry, workers, attractions that welcome people from all over the globe. While this year's Tourism Week will look different than it has in the past, it is still important to recognize and highlight the vital role that the industry plays in our economy and each and every community in our province. As I said earlier, small and medium-sized businesses are the lifeblood of the tourism industry in Newfoundland and Labrador. The current focus on physical distancing and staying at home has placed the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic directly on the shoulders of these operations and the people behind them. Tourism businesses in our province aren't just faceless corporations. They're owned and operated by people of Newfoundland and Labrador, our friends, our family, and our neighbours. The people who make up our tourism industry connect us to this place, our roots, and our culture. They offer unique experiences that inspire us, fire up our imaginations, and create a sense of belonging. These people are integral to the communities we live and lean on today, as well as the communities we all want to explore in the future when the time is right. Our province is known as a leading tourism destination, and while we are in a rough patch right now, we will get through this and we will emerge out the other side. We hope that this new program will help the tourism operators get up and running this year and see them through to restarting next year. And please keep in mind this new program may not be perfect right out of the gate, but we are working hard to ensure the benefit as many of the industry as possible. Thank you, and I turn the mic back over to you, Premier.
Thank you, Minister Davis, and we will now open it to the media for some questions on today's announcement.
Thank you, Premier Ball and Minister Davis. As a reminder, we will pass through the media list by order of registration so everyone is able to ask 2 questions and 1 follow-up. Since we started a little late, the media conference will now end at 12:13 p.m. I ask you to keep your phones on mute until called upon. We begin with Heather Gillis of CBC News. Please go ahead.
Thank you. A $5,000 to $10,000 one-time non-repayable working capital contribution. Is this enough to keep businesses afloat in Newfoundland and Labrador during the pandemic?
Well, this is $25 million, Heather, which goes to the tourism industry, which supports many, in addition to many of these, tourism industry folks will be impacted some by the announcement that was made by Service Newfoundland and Labrador Minister Osborne last week as well. So this is really complementary to many of the great initiatives that are out there already. And this is a package that, the Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador, we've been working very closely through Minister Davis and his officials. So this right now is a part of, as I said, many other programs that are available.
And
how many businesses? Oh, sorry, continue.
No, I was just going to say, in addition to that, Premier, you're 100% correct. We've worked very closely with the industry players on this, and one of the things that have been highlighted as a gap that existed was with respect to being able to pay those fixed costs that are coming at them every month. So this program was designed to help those operators with this. And, from our standpoint, it's the full suite of options. It's one spoke in this wheel that the operators will be able to avail of to help them get through this difficult period.
Okay, thank you. How many businesses do you expect will be applying for this funding?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. The initial numbers will be over 2,000 for sure. That would be applying for this, non-repayable contribution.
And I know that you're giving businesses money now to help them make it through, but have you contemplated opening up the borders and lessening travel restrictions or anything like an Atlantic bubble so that, tourism operators can have people coming into the province and basically paying for their services?
Yeah, certainly moving around the province, there's something I think that, most Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, we must get comfortable and know that we can actually do that safely within our own province. First, this is one of the components of this. This is a non-repayable contribution here, which makes it quite different than some of the loans that have been in place in other provinces. So right now, given the travel restrictions that we have in place, and we've got to find a balance between our healthcare system and where we need to be with our economy. So this is some initial help, or some immediate help right now that we can get to this industry. Other considerations will be made with balancing the public health concerns along with the economic concerns within our province. So, as we get into this a little deeper, as we get people moving around our province, considering options about moving around Atlantic Canada and travel restrictions, they will all come at a later date when we get better information about moving around our own province.
Thank you. Next, we have Ben Murphy of the OCM. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Minister Davis, I was just looking if you could give us a little bit more information on how exactly that non-repayable loan will work for the $5,000 or $10,000, dependent on gross sales.
Very good question. We've developed a tiered system because we wanted to make sure recognize the industry has micro operators as well as bigger operators. So we worked with that tiered system, and we used a threshold of 100,000 in gross sales that would allow us to delineate those ones that would receive that $5,000 contribution versus those that would receive that $10,000 contribution. The applications will open on Monday, June 8th, and the criteria will be on our website in the next couple of days. And I encourage operators right across our province to avail of those services, because we want. They've made great investments in the product that we have here in this province, and that's why so many people want to travel here. And from my standpoint, I encourage them to apply for this, and I wish them the greatest success as we celebrate Tourism Awareness Week, for sure.
And Minister, can you detail where this money is coming from? $25 million?
It's a great question. We have a COVID contingency fund that we've put in place as a government, and that $25 million will come from there.
Okay, and lastly, I did just want to ask about staycations. And Premier, you just mentioned, about letting people to be able to travel around the province first before opening any borders or anything. But do you have any idea when people are going to be allowed to start moving around locally and doing these staycations?
Well, so you'll see now as we move into alert level 3, get some experience of what has been like and what's happening within our province. So as we move into alert level 3, there's an opportunity there to be able to move around the province a little more freely. Also want to, I guess, remind everyone that there's been this, I guess some people would think that, our accommodations have been closed up. Our accommodations within Newfoundland and Labrador has never been closed up, like our hotels and our B&Bs. And of course, today's announcement are for those that are registered with the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. So we'll get to, get some better information as we move into alert level 3, and now we can move around our province. But of course, we're looking at a staycation for Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, as the minister, correctly points out. Over 500,000 of our residents last year took advantage of moving around our province to support the tourism industry.
And in
Thank you very much.
addition to that, the department is working on a staycation marketing campaign as well, which is really important for advising people that it's good to travel and some opportunities that they have within the province. And as someone that has had the pleasure of traveling a little bit of the province, I encourage residents to take advantage of that. And many do, as the Premier said. We had about 500,000 travel to within the province, and that goes along with in 2018 we had 533,000 non-residents come. So it's almost split down the middle on our tourism side. So we're hoping that we can and get people moving in the province, and I know that we're moving through the alert system. And as we move through that, we'll start to see some more freedom to move around the community.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Next up, we have Jody Cook with NTV. Please go ahead.
Hi there. Sorry, just had to get my phone off mute. I just wondered if you could be a little bit more specific, if we could go sort of micro detail into if you take a small operator, say someone in St. Mary's Bay who wants to apply for this grant and then allows them to facilitate their operations or pay some of the costs this summer, where do you see them putting that money in a smart way? Is it paying the heat and power bill, or is it allowing them to deep clean a B&B so that they can do turnover easier? What exactly do you picture this looking like?
Well, I think and that's a real good question, because as individuals operate their businesses, everyone would have, different concerns. So, so far what we have out there are a suite of, supports for a lot of industry within our province, which will help, the wage component as an example. Some would be loans that would be available, and a portion of that loan could be forgiven. This particular case here, this will be, up to $10,000 that they could use at their discretion for some of the fixed costs that those operators would have. So this is what makes this a little different, and a little different than what we see within most jurisdictions. This is a non-repayable contribution. So as they want to support the fixed costs that they have, or might be something that they would need to do to make sure that they can be ready, to open, quickly. Well, that's what this money is all about. It's at the discretion of those registered companies within our province.
And Jody,
we understand that. Sorry.
Yeah,
please,
and Jody, we've had the tourism operators in the province invest quite substantially in the product that they offer, because they do a lot of research in the department, and we do a lot of training with our operators, to make sure we're addressing the needs of what our traveler that is traveling to our province wants to see. And they've done a lot of investments in that, and that's some of those fixed costs that they have to pay for. And one of the things when we've been talking with our stakeholders and Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador in particular, they've highlighted these concerns, and we want to make sure that and they know where best to put their money in their business. So, from that standpoint, we want to make sure they can have that liquidity that they need to operate later in the summer when we open up, we hope, and into new year when we make 2021 the best tourism season we've ever seen.
And that's a nice segue to my next question, because we hear the word pivot all the time. Tourism operators are doing that, but I think many of them are really keen to find out when they might have the flexibility and freedom to start taking bookings, not just inside of the province, but outside of the province, understanding that September and October can be very profitable months for tourism operators. Is there any window on the horizon or sign of hope for them to start those considerations, or is that really premature?
Well, you know what? It's first of all is what we want to be able to do is make sure that we make people safe as a public health safety concern. We also must make sure that we understand what's happening outside our province as well. We've done a really good job, and we've been acknowledged nationally for the great work that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have done, keeping, making sure we follow the public health guidelines. However, what we're seeing outside of our province, is a different story. We're seeing examples in Ontario over the weekend, and we're seeing the trend moving upwards in positive cases coming out of Ontario. So if you're coming into Newfoundland and Labrador from outside this province, of course, in many cases you had to travel through, provinces like Ontario, or it could be Quebec or so on. So a lot of it will depend on what's happening outside of Newfoundland and Labrador as we continue to lift that. Listen, as a government and as public health officials, we want to make sure we keep people safe, but we also want to make sure that we support the social and economic well-being of our province. But we can only do that when it's safe to do so. We protect people coming in, but we also protect our own residents by making sure we put good guidelines in place.
And Jody, you made a good point about season extension, which is one of the things that our department has been really focused on over the last number of years, is trying to get more out of our season. We don't want it to be June, July, and August anymore. We want it to be on those shoulder seasons, a little bit in the early stages, a little bit in the late fall. We want to get that going a little bit stronger. So we've done some investment in that, and so have the operators. So that's a very good question, and obviously we want to have those operators avail of tourists coming into our province when it's safe to do so.
I got to say, it's almost counterintuitive as we are as Newfoundlanders and Labradorians. We've been very friendly people, and that's what we've been known for. We've had some of the greatest scenery that you could find anywhere in the world. But what makes us really stand out from a tourism opportunity is our great people and the experience that people have here. This is what they want to come for. So it's difficult for us right now as individuals to say that we cannot encourage people. We want to encourage people to come to Newfoundland and Labrador, but we must make sure that we protect our residents first, and that those that come here could have the proper experience that we want them to have in the future.
And as the Premier just said, we want them to come here, but just not right now. We want them to keep those vacation plans to come here because we have something that nowhere else in the world has to offer. And that's the people that we have in this province, and some of the, as the Premier alluded to, some of the beautiful scenery that you can't get anywhere else. And we want to keep those people that had their bookings canceled this year because of what we're all facing globally, to keep those bookings in mind and keep us top of mind for when you come back to this province in the future. When we get past this, and we'll get through this together. But it's really important. We want to encourage them to keep those plans in place to come here in the future.
Okay, finally, and in alert level 3, when we start to see some restrictions eased slightly, how will you instill confidence in some rural communities who might be worried about seeing not out-of-province travelers coming here, but inside provinces, interprovincial travel, the dreaded, air quotes, townies coming to their small communities, and concerns that, the whole protect us, don't infect us mantra?
Yeah, well, we know that this is not a towny virus, and I think Minister Hagee has mentioned that so many times. So right now, Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have just done a remarkable job, and we need to thank them. And no matter what community they live in, we've been very focused on making sure we do not have regional disparities within our province as we treat one community over the other. So Newfoundlanders and Labradorians have stepped up and followed the guidelines. So when we get into a better spot, and we're getting there, is that people can actually have the freedom of moving around our province, regardless of what your postal code is. And I think we'll get there. That's who we are as a people. But let's get some experience in moving around Newfoundland and Labrador first, and then in the future we can look at as we expand those borders, because that's who we are, and that's the experience that we want to be able to continue to share, but do it safely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jody. Next we have Marie Isabelle Rochon with Radio Canada. Please go ahead.
Yes, hi. I'm looking just to have more detail of where this $25 million is coming from. What proportion comes from the provincial? What proportion of this money comes from the federal? You also mentioned ACOA and the Community Business Development Corporation. How is it all? Can you just maybe break down this number for us?
Well, you just did a really good job in identifying 3 great programs that's been in place. This $25 million that we're announcing here today is all provincial money. So there's no federal component to this at all. What I mentioned about ACOA, that is federal money. So there's about $100 million that the federal government have put into ACOA to support, industries like the tourism industry within Newfoundland and Labrador. About 33 million of that will be allocated for our province, and some of that will be split from ACOA to the CBDCs that I've just mentioned already. So these are three groups that I've mentioned. Two of them are federal or federally funded, and the third one, the 25 million that I'm talking about here today, it's all provincial money. This is in addition to the work that we've already done with, permits and fees and electricity bills and so on. So these are all different components, but today's announcement of 25 million is all provincial money.
And it's all working in concert with each other too. We have a suite of options here now that are available to businesses that are going to allow them to transition through this difficult period and to open later this season and into 2020 and beyond, 2021 and beyond. This is one aspect that was missed, I guess, in some of the federal funding from the discussions we've had with Hospitality Newfoundland and Labrador and other stakeholders. So we wanted to address that as a province to try to ensure that these operators get the ability to move forward to provide that great service that we've become known for on a global stage. So I think it's important that we have these programs working together.
Perfect. And the 5,000 or 10,000 that will be given to tourism business, is it considered as a taxable income?
This is a non-repayable contribution to their operation. This will be to offset some of those costs that are fixed that come at them each and every month, whether it be loan payments themselves or mortgage payments or utilities or anything that would be in those business realms that they would have to worry about on a monthly basis. But at the end of the day, the operators that require this little bit of help to get through this difficult period is going to be well welcomed within the industry for sure.
And my last question is, the industry has been asking for help since day one of this pandemic. Why did it take more than 2 months to finally give some help to them?
Well, it's important, first of all, as we said, this complements a lot of the federal programs. So we've been working extremely hard with our federal government to make sure that they would address as many of those examples that we just mentioned here. And they've been able to do that. But, even with the exhaustive list that we've seen so far, there are still gaps that would need to be filled. So this is the reason why. It's really about, the domino impact. If we fill, the major proportion or portion that would be required through a federal program, then there was additional support that was added federally, still gaps that were left available. So as I said now for a number of weeks, we were working to see where those gaps were. So this is the reason why, we are making this announcement today as one of these, last gaps that will need to be filled. And if through this whole process we learn that there's maybe somebody that's left out again here that we need to address in some small groups of numbers of individuals or businesses, we'll address this as well. But these are for registered businesses within Newfoundland and Labrador, 25 million from the provincial government to support the tourism industry.
Thank you. Up next, we have Ashley Fitzpatrick from All Newfoundland and Labrador. Please go ahead.
Thank you. I was just hoping to get a little more of an explanation on how we got to the 25 million in particular. Minister, I know you mentioned that you're expecting over 2,000 applications for sure, and I'm just wondering that number and also the 25 million, how you're getting there.
Very, very good question, Ashley. One of the things with our department is we've done a lot of research through our online portal as well as through the Newfoundland and Labrador Statistics Agency to pull the information together to ensure that we built a program that would be able to reach the needs of the operators that we would want to work with in this case to try to help them get through that difficult period. So that's why we've established the 5,000 and 10,000. We've done the research to ensure that we can cover the cost of the over 2,000 potential businesses that would come in within that, suite of or that envelope of money. I hope that answers your question, Ashley.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Thank you. The other piece that I was wondering about was the Premier, you mentioned now on at least 2 occasions, you emphasize registered businesses, and I'm just wondering if there was a particular, focus here to not give support to, say, unregistered Airbnbs.
Well, right now, we want to recognize and make sure that we put a good experience in place. So if you're unregulated, there is really no way for government to be able to tell if the experience that people expect that would be here, that they will be able to receive. So it's important for us to work with the successful groups that we have within the province, those that have taken the time to register, and making sure that people that come to our province have a good experience. So these are people that are registered businesses within our province. These are people, that pay taxes in their community, pay taxes, provincially as well. So what we are doing right now is reinvesting some of this money back into those registered companies.
And I think I do get one more. Sorry. I just wanted to ask about, in terms of the processing of this, because you're talking, over 2,000 businesses or business operators potentially contacting you. I'm just wondering if you can give some sense of how you're going to be managing those calls, particularly given people are already sort of full of questions, I guess, on other programs as well, and what exactly they're going to qualify for.
Well, this is an industry here with the tourism industry that we have a lot of experience within Minister Davis's department. So many of them are already, registered through various tourism outlets and with the corporations within Newfoundland and Labrador. So on June the 8th, when we open up this portal, our anticipation, our goal here is to get this money into the pockets of those successful, eligible businesses within a 4-week period. We know one of the things that they've asked us to do is to be responsive, to be swift in our response to this. And, this is why this portal is set up. There's experience here with our departments, the various departments. So we want to make sure we get this money into the pockets of those operators as quickly as possible.
It's a very good question, Ashley. Our department is designed around our staff is very skilled, as the Premier said, at getting funding out the door to businesses that are in an application-based process. So, they'll be moving as quick as they can. So come June 8th, we're going to be getting money out on June 9th to some cases. But, if 2,000 or 2,500 applications come in on June 8th, well, it's going to take us time to get through, but we've designed a process so it's efficient and fast, because that's what the industry needs right now. They need the money in their hands as quick as we possibly can, and that's what we've committed to try to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Since we are running short on time, David Meyer's questions will be the final questions for today's media event. Please go ahead, David Meyer with the Telegram.
Thank you very much. I'm wondering, with the eligibility, could a single operator who owns multiple businesses, for example, if you own a bar and a boat tour, for example, would each individual business owned by the same owner be able to kind of apply for this money separately, or is it is the money just for each owner?
No, it's if you own multiple enterprises, that's a really good example, because we have some of the very aggressive, tourism operators here that they might have 4 or 5 different enterprises. So based on the volume that they would have in terms of the 100,000, either below 100,000 or above 100,000, they could either qualify for each enterprise for $5,000 or $10,000.
Okay, thank you very much. And when we reach, you mentioned, June 8th remains kind of the magic number in terms of level 3. When we get to that point, will we see the reopening of, provincially operated historic sites or even privately operated historic sites throughout the province?
Well, there's always a risk assessment, David, as you know, that when we work with public health, making sure that we, where we are as a province in terms of the number of cases, what's happening outside of Newfoundland and Labrador. So we'll work very closely, but we also recognize that we must give some lead time so people can make the adjustments and take the necessary time to put things in place to open up on any given time. So this is what, this is the work that we're doing right now. One of the reasons, by the way, that we've taken these media availabilities down to 3 times a week so we can give public health officials more time to actually go through the risk assessments and the things that are required to open up those facilities. So it's a good question.
Thank you again. And I think this question might have been touched upon a little bit earlier, but just looking for a little extra clarity. Lord knows we have renowned tours and commercials, that are elsewhere. Is there the money that we spend on those on those commercials that are largely playing outside of the province, is there a rethink happening on the on how that money will be spent? Will we see kind of the status quo on those tourism ads, or will they be rebranded?
That's a very good question, David. We've got those. One thing you missed in your question was the award-winning tourism ads that we put out as a province. So, we're very good at that, and we have been for a number of years. We're going to continue to develop those ads when we get past this COVID, when we open up to the rest of the globe. That's going to be one of the concerns that we have. But as I mentioned earlier, David, we're going to move into a staycation type mode as soon as we get to that level where we can start to move around the province a little bit more freely and encourage families and your bubble or your double bubble to travel around and see some of the beautiful things we have in our province. And we're going to have an award-winning campaign that's going to encourage people to do that as well.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for participating in today's media event. Please forward any additional questions on to us at the department. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you.